So altcoins are still getting a little bit smoked here, but I'm hoping this analysis will kind of help you why that is currently happening. But more importantly, where do we go next? We're talking about dominant spikes, retail literally exiting everything, and more importantly, why altcoin markets seem to be hitting the same kind of exhaustion every single time. And we also saw that in the last rotation where it just failed. So let's break down how we can maybe trade and make kind of sense of this crazy market right now. Also, like the video if you are still hanging on with altcoins or if you are looking to trade. Yeah, just let me know what you're doing, really. Now, there's something that I want to say right now, and you're going to be like, oh, okay. Only 8% of altcoins are outperforming Bitcoin at the minute, which is a bit worrying, but we will come on to that in a minute. But we are going to talk about, obviously, the great transfer of wealth from Bitcoin to altcoins has begun. And I don't know if that is clickbaity or not, but we are going to go through it. And you could argue a lot of things, and as you can see here, only 8% currently over a rolling 90-day period, excluding stablecoins, sorry, are outperforming, which is a bit underwhelming. But you could argue overwhelming for the amount of what we've always talked about on this channel. Too much token dilution. Too many tokens out there. Weaken buy-in, basically, or weakened buy-in. And then more importantly, narrative fatigue. There is no narratives that would argue where we're going to get a pump from. But that could all change on a sixpence when there is a catalyst, and that is what we need to be alert for. And as I said before in previous videos, if you're here, if you're taking on board the information, if you're still kind of in the market, you may well spot this and get some very, very nice entries. Not the bottoms, but ultimately a lot before essentially the retail come in on those big dildo candles, right? So let's talk about what is on this article as well. And you can see this alt season loading. You could argue into the lows, and we always talk about demand and opportunity, but the big reality is here, it could get worse before it gets better. And this is the thing with it. Dominance is still at 64, 65%. And that is, really, really high. But ultimately, it could go higher. Bitcoin is stealing all the liquidity. And that is where the big problem lies. And we talk about that a lot. But as I say, it could flip on a sixpence. And you could talk about the length of the dominance. And I talk about that a lot. It's like over 800 plus days now. Last cycle was 400, so there's a bit of a difference. And too many tokens, not enough buyers. And that is the sad reality. And I know I'm going to get shit in the comments for saying it, but I cannot go further than the truth here and mention the fact that this cycle over a 5-year period from 2020 to 2025 is very, 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 very different. And it sucks. It sucks. But as I say, you can trade it. Just about. But I want to highlight what is I've just put on the screen there, that the Bitcoin pumps first and the altcoins model is kind of breaking down realistically. That is because of two reasons, in my opinion. One, there's too many altcoins, but also, are too many people attached to their Bitcoin? That could be a problem too. So yeah, it's literally like throwing a random dartboard and picking your next altcoin. Not many pump. And to kind of highlight this a little bit more in terms of the altcoin index currently, this is not the best chart in the world, but ultimately it's telling you where we are at the lows. We could well get a small rotation where we will get relief bounces, and this is where the trading opportunities for a long position could come in. And we know it. When the market is exhausted, we will get a relief at some point, but it may not be a big, big boy one, which is what we were expecting last time, but it didn't happen, unfortunately. Meanwhile, you've now got companies buying Bitcoin like it's going out of fashion, which is strange. I understand that, but it's just the way it is right now. And that is where we also get that pain with the altcoins. And there will be a bounce at some point. It's just when Bitcoin stays still. And you could argue, yes, Bitcoin is staying still at the minute in terms of technicals, but volume inflow, I'll show you, is still pretty deep and pretty consistent, which is good. So yeah, you can see this here. It's very, very clear. A lot of companies, you can see here, Metaplanet, you've got Germany's Bitcoin group buying it. You've got MicroStrategy, obviously. There's a lot of things happening, but also you've got retail kind of situations around Simplicity of BlackRock buying, with Fidelity, their funds, so to speak, doing well. And also you can back this up with this Saxo Be Invested article about digital assets, how Bitcoin's still hovering above key levels, but more importantly, you can see how much inflow, 2 billion inflows in the last week. Ethereum's ETF has finally seen a little bit of strong demand for the first time ever, and it's only just managed 4.2 billion. So it's quite small, but it is slowly growing. And overall, altcoins underperform with liquidity, now concentrated in Bitcoin and a select few meme coins. And for the visual effects, there you go. It is just, yeah, just crazy right now. Not to mention the fact that Bitcoin hangs heavily on the rate cut optimism and trade deal optimism. So yeah, as you can imagine, rate cuts, yeah, cool. Tariff deals, yeah, stuff like that. It could also affect Bitcoin, not to mention the likes of, consumer price indexes, CPI. So yeah, there's stuff happening here where a lot of people are putting a lot of money in Bitcoin. It's becoming more and more important, and therefore the altcoin situation is, well, we're not really that interested yet. But it will be a time where it will eventually change. So Bitcoin is at kind of the level highs of where we've been stuck for a while. We've kind of been stuck around this 108, 107. You could argue a little bit higher level for a little bit. It's been pretty interesting to see how we are stabilizing above this zone. But as I've alluded to before in previous videos, it's Ethereum that's the problem, and that is pretty much sideways, and it has been for a long, long time now, since the start of May. Nothing's happening. It's like, okay, why? And you could argue the same with like Solana, gradually just getting lower and lower. It's kind of slowly changing character here, but nothing to kind of really get excited about, which is kind of the problem with the way altcoins are. But it may well change because some of these altcoins are starting to shift mentality a little bit. We're starting to capture some key levels, and we may well find that they do move. So let's look at the bigger picture with the likes of Bitcoin Dominance. We are currently here. It feels like it's been around 65 to 63% for ages, and you could argue yes, because when we start to zoom out, we could see how it's been at these levels for a long time. And I know I'm boring, but the amount of growth that this has had over a long period of time has been pretty daunting and a bit boring. And this is probably why a lot of retail people have quit. And it kind of makes sense. But again, you can top it up with the likes of the total market cap and all other slash BTC here, and how this has been a really, really long, sloping, ugly downtrend for a long time. Others.d, for example, here is another one. It's just been very, very few and far between of relief bounces. And yeah, you could argue 0.31% here for the overall market capitalization of the total three minus stable currencies is just in a slow bleed. Where does it go? There's levels down from like 2020 we could address here. We're kind of almost there, where it may well change very, very rapidly, but it just depends on what the catalyst is. Is there a catalyst? Is the ETF of altcoins going to be the catalyst? And as I said before, we do get these little relief bounces which catch people out, but they're not strong enough. They're not big enough. They're not enough to get retail back in. They're not enough to make people feel like, oh, I've actually made some money from 2023, 2024 here. That is where we have that situation. So if we are going to look at altcoins in a bigger kind of zone, there is some genuine opportunities here to make some money. So if you look at the likes of Chainlink, for example, here, we've had a big, massive downtrend over the course of the start of the year. We've had a bit of a relief here, but again, as I mentioned, it kind of rejected massively at this zone, and we are in a downtrend, but we are slowly starting to see a change of character here where we may well be capturing this EMA. We may well be going back bullish on the RSI, for example. And even down here, this is a free indicator you can use. There's a link below. It's about the stable currency dominance. And this is the most important thing, risk on, risk off. And we are starting to slowly maybe going back down again. Down is good, by the way. That means money flow is coming in. Stable currencies are getting printed and all that kind of stuff. But it's just all about the patience. And where could we go? Well, ultimately, we could have a relief bounce right now. We could on a lot of altcoins because we have had a pretty dire couple of weeks. And as I said, Ethereum is probably the one where we hold the keys, realistically. If Ethereum wants to go higher, altcoins will probably go with it. But right now, it's sideways. And it's like, oh, okay, we're kind of waiting and see. But it is summer. Summer is often a bad month and a bad period, certainly June, certainly July, and maybe we may not see a relief until maybe September when we do get that rate cut. So there's a lot of things to kind of unpack here. So yeah, long story short, we need to be very, very mindful. But as I said before in previous videos too, the dollar is weakening. That's normally a bullish take, but right now Bitcoin's just stuck. And even with the inflow of volume from institutions and companies, well, where's the price? Actually, it's not there yet. Normally you'd associate a stable Bitcoin with a very, very rampant bull market for altcoins to recover. That hasn't happened yet. But will it? And to kind of like put this a little bit more together is this article that was released this morning about, how OGs could be potentially dumping on Wall Street investors here. And you could argue a lot of things here in terms of, well, why is Bitcoin price steady and stagnant? Why is the inflows like the most aggressive we've ever seen? Why is like Michael Saylor and all the other companies buying Bitcoin like it's going out of fashion? It's very, very interesting. The treasury flywheel, it's just mad. It's like it is a buying frenzy, but ultimately we haven't had that supply shock yet. We haven't had that squeeze to the upside. But that's the thing. That squeeze to the upside could happen very, very quickly when it happens, if that makes sense. I.e., if we break that wall, go above 112,000, off we go, we squirt to the upside. That could maybe bring people back to the market, maybe get some interest, because in realistic terms, your USD price will be a little bit higher, but your altcoins will still be suffering in the back end. If you're interested trading, by the way, there's a link below to Blowfin. There's a big old competition. If you've put a bit of volume through it, you'll probably win some prizes, funny enough, because there's not many people that are doing competitions at the minute because, as I say, retail have kind of buggered off. So just to finish off, I'm going to explain a little bit of what I am looking at as specific trades. If you want to see my exact entries, so to speak, or more breakdowns on it, check out Patreon. I do videos, but I'm just waiting and seeing what's going to happen with this structure change right now. We may well start seeing, as you can see here with Solana, we have broken out. I want to see a bit more of a trend here. I don't want to just ape in unless we see some strong demand or a big, massive drop to the downside on the stable currency dominance. You know, Solana looks pretty good. The one that looks really good right now is obviously Hype, and we may well be going back up to the upside here. We have had a decent correction, but not enough. But we'll see where things go here. But ultimately, it all depends on this bottom indicator. What is, and I'll put it in big for you, this going to do next? And I've talked about this quite a lot in videos where if we do go gradually back down again, this could be a big drop, big relief, and then go back lower. We may well see a risk on appetite for altcoins to show a little bit of life, but it may not be the bull market. It may not be the altcoin season we're all hoping for until we get lower than these regions of below 5%, because what would that indicate? It would indicate that risk on of stable currency assets are rotating into other, obviously Bitcoin and altcoins for obvious reasons. So we need to be very, very mindful. But as I said before, there's a lot of altcoins here that are looking relatively interesting. I think the other one that looks very interesting is obviously Cardano, where this is looking probably more negative than, anything realistically. There's a lot of altcoins that are still looking relatively negative. So there is opportunities across the board here, but it just depends ultimately, are we going to see a flip? And I think, as I said before, the key is in Ethereum that is doing nothing. And I'll show you on the 4-hour time frame what Ethereum looks like, because it looks awful. I mean, just look at that. That is just horrendous. That is literally telling us that nothing wants to move right now. So when we zoom in a little bit, there's zero opportunities right now. Even when we're looking at the stable currency dominance, yeah, we're below the EMA, so to speak. It is going down gradually. But for me, the likes of Ethereum, the likes of Solana, hold the keys and they're just not moving. So there we go. Feels like history is repeating, so to speak, where we are still waiting for said things to happen, said things to move. And comment which altcoin you think will win the rotation war. Will we see an Ethereum move first, or a Solana move first, or anything else? Because it's been a bit mad right now. Also, watch this video. It will help you understand the narrative of the market.